to the August 11, 2022 meeting of the Concord Historical Commission, and to welcome folks on Zoom and to people in person, to say that, in fact, it's only appropriate. This is a historic moment. It's the first time we've met in person in 2 years, 2+ years maybe. I'd also like to welcome our newest member of the Historical Commission, Ryan Hanley of Lexington Road, who is our new associate member. And just to make a point that one of the things, not on tonight's agenda, but we will be working again on picking up the administrative code, which we had started before COVID hit, that would allow an associate member in the event that we did not have a quorum with regular members to step in and serve as a full member, so that we could indeed have a quorum and vote on items. So that's the future, but I just wanted to bring that up. I think we talked about it at the last meeting. So I'd like to move on to item number 1, which is the Thomas Mott Shaw House, over which we have a preservation restriction, and there is a proposal by the owner to construct a 2-car garage on the property. I think there's a gentleman here.
Yes, my name is Elise Stone, and I'm the architect.
The architect. Yes, hi.
Yes, the architect. Hi, how are you doing?
Wait 1 second. Can we get that thing off the screen? Thank you. There you are.
Yeah.
Hi. Thank you so much. Yes, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. And I'm representing the applicants, the owners of the property. So, I don't know if you know the history recently. So 309 Garfield Road was originally the guest house of the 317 Garfield Road. And in the past year, it was, they created a new lot, which is 21,886 square feet with the guest house on it. So the guest house is a very cute structure, and we're not doing anything touching that at all. And as a matter of fact, the garage, we kind of decided to put the garage on the other side of the kind of road that kind of runs through the property, so that it wouldn't compete visually with the existing structure. So the desire is to have a 2-car garage. So, and there is a finished room above it. The existing house is 1,380 square feet, so it's quite small. So the idea is to have a little space for guests to stay above the garage. But the garage is the standard 24 by 24 foot garage. So it's, standard 2-car garage. We, tried to keep the architecture, in keeping. It's all going to be stuccoed. The windows are matching. We try not to do anything to distract from, the house that sits behind it, which is the old historic house, and the guest house in front of it. The other thing, it's down. We're kind of building it into the hill. That road does take a little trip down. I don't know if any of you had a chance to, drive by and see it.
At least I'm fairly familiar with the property. I used to work on the property for Joyce.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I it's on the right side, if I'm looking at it, on the right side of the dwelling, right?
Well, so it's actually as you come down the road, the guest house is on the left.
The left, right?
Yes, and so it's right after the driveway. So you would take a right up the driveway.
Yes.
To go to the main house. So it's right past that. It's kind of
okay.
And the road does go down, and it's going to be on the right. So the guest house has its own little driveway, that goes to the right of it, and this is going to be across the street from that driveway.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
and the top of the garage, what's the elevation compared to the house?
It's lower than the house. I don't know the height of the existing house. We didn't have that surveyed. I believe. Do you have the drawings that you could put up? I don't know. Usually, we're actually going to the zoning board after this. Usually, they have the drawings that I've submitted up on the screen.
This is an all-new, tonight is an all-new event for us. So just please be patient.
No, that's fine. That's fine. But you have the drawings in front of you?
Yeah. We have all seen the drawings. They were part of the meeting document.
Oh, okay. So the height should be on there. I mean,
the height is 22.6. I don't know what the
22.6. Okay. Yes. Yeah. And it will sit actually lower than just
Yeah.
even on the grade, it sits actually lower than the existing guest house.
I like that.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't really need to see, well, I'll defer to others. Are there other questions about the design, the location? Certainly within the within the preservation restriction, you were definitely allowed to construct this. Yeah, Michael, do you have any?
No, I look at it, I think it's, I think it's in concert with our agenda. It's certainly in concert with our goals for historic preservation and to sustain structures and to, in some way, add something that will complement and reinforce what's there. So I'm in line, but unless the planning department or some advocate has some other approach or idea.
I don't, that's, good question. I don't know that they have to go before the planning board. I think,
No, we're going in front of the zoning board because
zoning board.
Right.
when the lot was created, it became a non-conforming, the guest house became non-conforming to the road.
Yeah.
Even though the
Right.
road cuts through, so it's just non-conforming by the front section.
There it is.
So, if you see actually the site plan, you'll see
Right.
it's the road. So, because they have, those dotted lines are kind of the right of way. So, it's,
Yep.
Right.
it's kind of based on that. So when we talked to the building inspector, he said this would need a special permit because of that non-conformity of setback.
Okay, so you go to them after us.
Yes, exactly. Yes, we're on for 7:15, although they always run a little late.
Tonight. Well,
Tonight?
yeah, sounds like it.
Tonight?
Excuse me? Yes, tonight. Yes.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes.
Well, I don't know, Ann, I don't know, do I need to take a vote? Or maybe,
Motion to accept
Yeah.
the drawings as presented.
is there a
There's no
second?
other
I'll second.
from the commission?
No, this is us, this is Michael's.
Well, I
vote.
know.
Do you have a-
No.
Okay, or Michael seconded, so I would say all in favor, Alan,
Aye.
Nancy,
Aye.
Michael,
Aye.
Melissa, aye. So yes, we support it.
Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay,
Oh, that's the other Michael.
That's
well,
right.
I don't know, yes, there's a gentleman, Michael Carucci.
Carucci?
Mr. Carucci, are you there?
I am, yes.
Yes, so please introduce yourself. I'm not you are here representing, and what issue?
No, we own, my fiance and I, Dr. Maricela Marrero, own the property. Maricela is also
Yeah,
on
those
the
are the
Zoom.
owners.
Oh, you're the
Yeah.
owners. Oh, well,
Yes.
Yeah.
welcome to Concord.
Wanted,
Thank you.
to make a presence felt.
No, well, thank you. I think
Nice to meet you.
nice to meet you, and I appreciate your sense, your architect and your sensitivity to the property and the importance of it. It's a beautiful piece of property. It's a beautiful,
I love that.
yeah,
Yeah, beautiful.
so, thank you.
We're thrilled to be part of it.
Well, thank you. So, yes. I
Thank you
think
very
we'll-
much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
move on
Bye-bye.
to the Wright Tavern preservation restriction.
That was fast.
Yeah, well, I like an efficient meeting. I am remiss, though, I realize I'm supposed to take attendance officially.
Oh.
So we step aside, I have to, please state your name and that you're present. Alan?
Alan Bogosian, present.
Ryan Hanley, present.
Nancy Nelson, present and
Michael?
in person.
Michael Capizzi, present.
And Melissa
Oh,
Sullivan.
I'm not present. I don't know what I am. Is there a drone in the air looking at this? I don't know.
And I guess that Rebecca is not here, so okay, so thank you. So, okay, we're supposed to do that very officially. Then now let's move on to the Wright Tavern preservation restriction. I gather that there's no one from the Wright Tavern project here. I haven't heard from anyone. You haven't heard from anyone, and
Town council.
or town.
Okay.
No, I actually
Wouldn't
didn't.
expect that.
I wouldn't
maybe.
expect them. So I'd like to open it up to members of the commission for their comments about, so this has come back. We've seen this a couple, 2 or 3 times. Most recent was reviewed by town council and came back to us. I know I have a comment.
With all kind of markups in different colors.
Yeah, so, but this time it was only in one,
Yeah, so
one red.
welcome to Concord.
So, I know Nancy has a number of issues. I'm just going to bring up the one that I found most troubling to me, and that was about public access. The way the preservation restriction is written now, it is that the grantor, that is the folks from the Right Tavern, the nonprofit that was created, it commit to 12 days a year, and then to be determined.
That's a minimum.
That's the minimum, but that's all they say.
Mhm.
And I feel strongly that this is a very important historic building that has been supported by the town of Concord's taxpayers for over $500,000 and perhaps more if they come back at another CPC grant request, that we need to ask for more than just a 12-day minimum. I do not know what the proper answer is, proper minimum, but we still, and this has been the question from day one, what is the ultimate use that they intend for this property? So,
If I don't want
Michael,
to,
yep.
I don't want to misstate something, but I do remember, I think at our meeting, or certainly at my site visit there, that their goal was to introduce this as part and parcel of a historic preservation tour, as part of the historic structures in Concord that provide tours on I thought, certainly a minimum of a couple of days a week, if not every day. Now, I don't know if that concept has been altered, but if I remember correctly, not only a site visit with Francesca, but meeting with them at Cafe Nero for several hours. After that, that was their goal, was to ultimately have this. Now, maybe I misunderstood something, but did that change in any way? It seems like it did, and I concur with you that if at minimum we've given them $500,000, I think it was 2 grants, am I? 250 and 250? 250 and 250 at this point?
260 and 234, something
yeah.
like that.
Yeah, I do agree with you that, if we're going to be using town funds to help sustain the structure, and I do know there was some structural issues and et cetera, and then there was some revisions to the improvements that were done, recently and back, a century ago. But I do believe I concur with you. So I do think there should be some specificity and clarity on that.
I agree. Other comments?
I'm just curious as to how the figure of 12 days was arrived at. Do we know? Is there?
Well, Nancy, you had a thought about what you.
Well, it's a question back to Alan, I think.
Was that because of the building? Was the building
It's cited, some code is cited in the draft PR, and I was assuming it's a new definition, like the building is completely preserved or something, certified historic structure. So you'll recognize this is 170H, parent 4, parent A, parent Roman numeral IV, and 170H4B, capital B. Is that the building code of the state of Massachusetts? Because I don't know what it is.
No, I don't believe.
You don't
it is.
recognize
No,
that?
No.
So Anne might know.
Right, I can clarify. When I initially saw this, it didn't have any minimum. It just said that the tavern would be open on days and times that they determined, right? So I thought that there should at least be some sort of minimum. And going back to my previous job, we applied for and received this totally preserved status, which was part of the Massachusetts Building Code 20 years ago. And so there was and in that totally preserved status, they required that you be open to the public for 12 days per year.
Okay.
A minimum.
A minimum.
A minimum.
Right.
So that was part of
And
the state.
that same code provided, interestingly enough, and this is actually the more interesting thing, if you had that status, and that's different from what's cited in the PR, if you had that totally preserved or permanently preserved status, it allowed you some flexibility and latitude in meeting the code. So somebody was going to research that, but I don't know if we did.
And I had heard that that 12-day minimum was set up because of historic New England's study houses, where, you know, it can't really handle any more than 12 days a year. So the code has since changed, and now they go by the International Code for Museums and Historic Sites. And I don't believe that there is a minimum. I know that the Wright Tavern was also concerned, they were concerned about the public access piece, especially because the preservation restriction is in perpetuity. So I think that this is sort of a good balance, because they agreed to a preservation restriction in perpetuity.
No, they were required to have
That's
a
part of the
preservation
You were
restriction.
required.
It was a condition of the first grant, and it was supposed to have happened before town meeting this time,
Yep.
but it didn't. So,
Yeah.
so
We eliminate that verbiage in there or make an adjustment to it?
Well,
I think it needs more discussion, actually.
Okay.
Yes.
And I think CPC will have a thought about this.
when you meet next week, 2 weeks?
Whenever the next
I
CPC
thought
meeting
it's-
is.
The next meeting is Tuesday.
Yeah, yes, thank you. I saw that
Yeah.
reminder.
Yeah,
I think the whole purpose of a preservation restriction is, in this case, and in many cases, is to protect the public investment in a structure and in the preservation of that structure. And I think the Historical Commission, but even more importantly, the the CPC acronyms, is going to want more than that. It's very minimal. It's very minimal. So that's what I think.
Would I be right to think that the Wright Tavern people themselves want more? I mean, perhaps not to have the legal minimum raised, but their plan is to have it publicly accessible, I think, fairly extensively. Is that right?
You raise an interesting notion.
No,
We don't know what their plan is.
I didn't get that impression when you,
We have no
Melissa,
idea.
you and I walked through there. I didn't get that
No.
impression. I thought it was going to be remaining as businesses and
Upstairs.
offices.
Upstairs,
Yeah.
second and third, yeah, and then the first floor was for maybe interpretive or
A
exhibition. of
museum or
some-
an 18th century tavern
Yeah, it
or
was still
all
very
kinds.
clear.
Or social functions. I think they were doing that back room.
Yeah.
So, you know, this was
Yeah,
a
seminars and workshops and
Threshold
lectures
question.
and stuff.
from 2 years ago when we first
Yeah.
talked about this, is,
Yeah.
you know, before we could make any kind of judgment, you really need to suggest, or not suggest, tell us, what are you gonna do in this building? Not
Right.
just preserve it. We appreciate that, and they've done a lot with that. They've hired high quality folks. Lynn Spencer is terrific, and Larry Sorley, whom you know.
Who may not be involved anymore,
Well, I don't know.
but we don't know.
We don't know, but I don't think that, I would not sign this or recommend the select
Right.
board sign this without better understanding of how this is going to be used, and certainly how much access the public will have.
So there's not been, so this is interesting, because I know Lynn Spencer has a very extensive historical structures
Yeah.
report, and they've made a lot of progress on the physical
Um,
structure. But there's not a similar, I take it there's no working statement, vision for the museum. I've heard it described by them as a museum, but that's not been formally produced. And
I've heard it described as an 18th century tavern.
yeah.
We've heard a
So
lot.
Okay,
We've
so,
heard a
yeah, I
lot.
think that-
And I-
There's
I-
there's a lot of ideas.
Still
Yeah.
waiting
I think,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
tell us what it is.
I think someone representing them needs to be invited to our next meeting to explain, clarify, increase understanding of exactly where they are and where they're going, unless this has to be addressed within the next 30 days.
Well, okay, that's a question, Nancy, or the CPC, they're
Next Tuesday or something, whenever we meet.
Well,
And
next-
set a reminder.
I guess I would suggest that we don't, Anne has taken down what our position is. Nancy is the representative for the Historical Commission on the Community Preservation Committee, which meets next week. It's my understanding that the chair there, Diane Proctor, has also got issues with this access, the limited access.
Yeah.
And that we would not recommend this being adopted yet or signed, and we would ask them to come back at our September meeting.
So,
Yeah, I mean, there were some issues that I don't know if it was brought to the attention of the commission, but I do know from not only my site visit and observing it, but my meeting with them, that the first consultant and/or architect they hired gave them a scope of structural deficiencies, which was then part and parcel of what was submitted in order to get the first grant. They then hired somebody with regard to the second grant, and that structural engineer and architect basically dismissed what was presented by the first structural team.
that's
And-
news. That's
Yes.
news to me, actually.
Yeah.
I have,
Yes, and so the second team actually disagreed with the first team. So I said to
could you
them,
be more specific about who the team is? Who the
me?
teams are?
I-
Yeah,
I-
because the
I-
first,
Go ahead.
the first study was a structural engineer who
Right,
was very fond of
Right.
steel reinforcements in the attic
Right.
and whatnot.
right.
And
And
there
they
was
said,
some different opinion when a volunteer consultant said, whoa,
Yeah.
whoa, can we
so I'll
read?
tell you exactly what I was told. So the
Okay.
first structural engineer, and this is what I observed also looking at the structure, the first a structural team, engineer, whatever, engineer and architect, stated that the structural deficiencies were in the columns in the basement. However, the second team that came in said it had the structural deficiencies, if you can believe this, were in the roof. So I did not, again, having been involved in a number of developments in my life, I had never really seen that dichotomy from two different structural teams. So I thought at that point, at least, would have assumed it would have been clarified by now that issue had been addressed and quantified, not quantified, but placed in writing before whatever the last grant writing group was with regard to that $230,000.
That's one of my comments, actually.
Yeah, so clearly, there needs to be some, specificity and certainly an understanding of where they're at and where they might be going. I do know their ultimate goal would require extensive funding on their behalf to ultimately make this a venue on a daily basis, such as the other structures we have in town, which they stated what was their goal.
To you,
So
but you know what?
I'll
To
stop
you.
talking, but we need to invite them here. I can tell you that.
Well, I mean, and Michael, in their conversation with Michael, he's saying that's what they said. We don't have that as an official, this is what our plan. This
Oh,
is
no,
officially
we
how
have-
we intend
Right.
to use the bit.
Right,
Right,
right.
Yeah.
Here
So we need to get that, because they certainly presented it to me, and I said to them, to be candid with you, not on behalf of the historical, just as, on behalf as a resident and someone who has been involved in this type of development before, I'm happy to help you in any way that I can. Just let me know what you need, when you need it, and how. And I hadn't heard any words from them.
Okay, well, and
Tom was supposed
this,
to
you know
provide
what,
us.
this came up pretty quickly. We just got the marked up copy from the town council, so it really did not have time to invite Tom Wilson or the folks from the Wright Tavern. I mean, we literally kind of got this,
2 days ago.
yeah,
Really?
and
Oh, I felt so far behind.
no, you weren't, no. So that, Michael explains.
We need somebody here.
Normally, Mike, that Tom Wilson and his crew would be
Right.
there, like they were
Right.
the last time they.
Right.
So we will just have to invite them for the September meeting
Yes.
with I'll send an email to him tomorrow and just explain
Yeah.
kind of the sense of what the
Yeah.
discussion tonight.
I'm not done.
Yes, so we should read Nancy, because Nancy does have a lot of, yes, so,
I have to have a chance.
yeah, Nancy, it's just, yes, ma'am.
So I spent too much of the afternoon with my head buried in this draft. I didn't see it as a marked up draft. I saw it just as a draft. Okay.
All I saw,
So-
the only change I saw was the public access in that paragraph. Everything else
I
was
didn't,
been accepted.
whoa, I didn't see that.
Okay.
But anyway, so a foundational question is, has the grant agreement been signed yet? Because the relationship between the grant agreement and the preservation restriction is not perfect.
The first one was signed, certainly.
Well, the
Long-
second one needs to be signed too, I
Right.
think.
Oh, they, actually, right, it's on my desk. They have signed it, but it hasn't gone yet to the select board or to
Oh, great.
the town manager.
I would love to see a copy of what they signed. I think I know what it says because I have one of the later drafts. So the draft CPC or the draft grant agreement that I have says that CPC also has to review and approve the PR. And there's no provision for that made in the PR draft. There's a provision for the Concord Historical Commission's vote, but not for CPC's vote. And CPC also has to review. So I think that's a major change. I think I'm right. I finally found what they referred to as Exhibit E, which was not listed with the other exhibits on the front page of the draft PR. And Exhibit B, it contains restriction guidelines, which there's a major disclaimer by Lynn Spencer that this is by no means a comprehensive list. It's only a sampling of some of the common modifications which may be contemplated by the parties. So she has listed here minor and major kinds of work for different categories of work.
Is that the same thing that we have seen before?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
March. I finally found it in March
Yes,
email.
so we have
So we
seen a
have
major
that.
and minor.
So we have that.
Yeah.
One of my questions was, is there a separate list of minor actions not requiring approval? Because there's a lot of reference to that in the draft PR. I have a question for Anne. In the draft grant agreement that I have, the grantee and the grantor are mixed up. And the preservation restriction grant is very legalistically correct. So in
Well,
some places, the grantee is listed as the grantor and vice versa. So that probably could be true. So we answered the question about the certified historic structure. On page 2 of the draft, there's a reference, there is Exhibit B references the nomination form, the NHL nomination certification form. I actually have the National Archives copy of the NHL nomination and certification form. And it was certified on September 25th, 1975. And it's a long document, it has tons of really interesting historical information about how that all happened. So there is a date, and I have the official copy, and I gave it to Tom Wilson or somebody with the Wright Tavern Legacy Trust, explicitly delivered it. So that is another, that's Exhibit E that we just talked about, and it's referenced elsewhere in the PR, but it's not referenced on the first page that lists all the exhibits. So I was very, very interested in the list of minor actions that didn't require town approval, because later on page 3, I'm sorry, this was such a weighty looking document that I had to put on my serious hat. So On page 3, where it talks about restriction guidelines. No, I already talked about that. Page 3. Now therefore, it says somewhere here, now therefore. It talks about the grantor does hereby voluntarily grant and convey unto the grantee this preservation restriction in perpetuity over the exterior and designated parts of the interior. And my question was, are these in Exhibit E that we don't know? Maybe it is.
So you're asking what are the designated parts? Do you
Yeah,
want to
this
split
is all centered around Exhibit E, and what it does and does not allow is minor. I mean, I think it's good as far as it goes. We might want to take a look at whether or not, this is capturing the minor things.
Yeah.
But anyway, and then page 3, page 5. I'm moving quickly. I only went up to page 6 and then I got lost and out of my area of expertise. Public access. I think we've talked about. And so I think that's fine. And then page 6. I'm curious, as Anne knows, I'm curious about this phrase that said, it's in 6A. And my question is, does this provision conflict with public access that we have presumed all along would happen? And does it make public access subsidiary to the use, including without limitation events and activities related to a church or community center, religious education classes, meetings of church groups, and social events? We still don't know what is planned for public access on the first floor. So it's hard to judge what's appropriate. And lastly, I think in E, I think where it says after the building 1, 2, 3 in line 4, after the capitalized building, it says that they reserve the right to make minor modifications and to make any changes of any kind to all other parts of the interior of the building that do not affect the structural integrity of the building. And I think it should say or, because if it says and, it means both number 1 and number 2 have to be in play. Does that make sense to anybody, or am I off base? You know what I mean?
I think you're
Okay. And then in the second to the last sentence, they're talking about the characteristics that contribute to the architectural, archaeological, or historic integrity of the exterior of the building. And I would think is very important, because that's what we've always been concerned with, is to say or the interior, to the extent. It does say to the extent they're not designated in this agreement, but it kind of minimalizes the interior. Yeah.
So
And then,
maybe, maybe you should
and
send.
then my last thing, my very, very, very last thing.
Yep.
And we've talked about it, is that CHC has to approve this also. That's all I have.
Yeah, and is that, well, well, that's what we're talking about right now. I mean,
Yeah.
and we're
Yeah.
not approving.
Yeah.
What I would ask you to send to Anne, your suggestions, make it so, because that was a lot.
I know, I sent it to her.
Oh, you got it. Okay.
Today,
Yeah, yeah, I know, it was late. I
Okay.
was working
Okay.
really.
Just so,
I was
just
working
so
late
that
and
it can be,
Send it to
That
you
was
too.
before the glass of wine.
I know, I have it, and I printed it out, but it didn't mean as much. It's very,
It was rosé, it was only 12%.
okay, wait, don't take that in. Okay,
Thank you, Nancy,
Have to
because I
have some
know
fun.
that is, no, you know, that's rule number one. Thank you, because this has been a very long process. And it has been very frustrating, I think, for us,
Continues.
because the fundamental question just never gets answered.
Yeah.
So now we have more questions for them. And these are things that town council wouldn't be thinking about, and I
Right.
appreciate that.
Right, yeah, I
Um,
think it's pretty obscure.
So,
some of it.
Well, no, nice job, Nancy, by the way. Nice
This
job.
is the National Register nomination. It's 52 pages long and it includes all kinds of correspondence and the history of the national park actually paying attention to it as a historic landmark.
didn't they, I thought at one point they wanted to become a part of the park.
I don't know. I didn't see that in here, but you
thought
might dig it
You
up.
probably said no.
It's not on the Macris page.
This is, no, this is a National Archives document and here's the document title.
Okay.
But with our new historic portal, we'll have access to that. That's later.
Yeah, this can't be lost. This is awesome
Well,
correspondence.
they surely have this.
Tom has it.
Yeah, well, I would
course.
expect it would be, well, I don't know. I don't know what,
I delivered in person.
okay.
to some-
Okay.
Somebody.
Well, thank you. So we don't have a
Okay, there.
resolution on that. We just have a lot of comments. And that we will again ask Tom and I don't know, Lynn or whomever he wants to bring back for our next meeting.
Yeah, they're very well maybe answers to some
Yeah.
of these and explanations, so.
And I presume you're gonna relay all this next Tuesday anyway to CPC.
Yeah.
Okay, so we will move on to the next item, which is the Minuteman National Historical Park. This is to, Simone Monteleone, the superintendent, presented to us at the last meeting. That was kind of an overview and more specifically about the landscape and trail work that was to be done. This month, we're really kind of trying to focus on the structures that are being addressed. And so you've got the documents that were on our current meeting documents on the website. I just also want to say that Nancy and I attended the select board hearing on Monday because Simone presented there as well. Among the issues that we have, of course, are some of the buildings that they're talking about making commercially available for renting are historic buildings. Sam Brooks was a witness structure. Olive Stowe was built not long after the revolution. And we've asked if they might, in our letter, which you all should have a copy of the letter that was prepared for Simone, brought up some of the same things. Also, are there alternative uses? Would you consider alternative uses? As Nancy, when she was superintendent, you speak this better than I, tried to work with trustees of reservation for agricultural, use of.
And even before that, there was an agricultural partnership with the farm school. Are you finished? I want to interrupt.
Yeah,
you.
no, go on, because I want to talk about it.
So the focus for Concord is about from the major John Buttrick House where the visitor center is up on Liberty Street. I think that is a combination of maybe quarters and other park uses, but I'm not sure. It's been hard to get information. The Elisha Jones house is a very historic and prominent house that's been the home for 7 superintendents, going back as far as I can document from my own experience and knowledge. So that is proposed to be a market lease. Then going from there, there is a yellow house that used to be the home of the chief of interpretation. And that's kind of catty corner from Miriam, from the
It's on
Miriam
Lexington
house.
Road across from,
Yeah, and that's,
just in the corner of Lexington and Old Bedford Road.
and I think that's may already be leased. It's
I don't know.
Gowan Clark.
Gowan-
Was it on our list? I
It's
don't
on the
think so.
list.
Okay, it's on the list. And then one that's a little further down, Old Bedford Road was leased in the past to, are used for quarters for volunteers who were actually farmers who were related to the farm school project when they, and so going from there, Joe Palumbo's house, not recent, sort of recently, became part of the park because it belonged to the park. And then Joe Palumbo, much beloved in Concord, passed away. His family was very upset that they could not remain there, but they could not. So that house is proposed for a market rate lease. Going from there,
East Quarter.
there's that's the East Quarter.
Oh, that is,
Schoolhouse.
that
Yeah,
is
that
Palumbo. Okay,
Columbus
I've never-
House is
okay.
the East Quarter.
Yes, got
So
it.
that's a historic house too. Then I think we come to the Farwell Jones house, which is the farmhouse that sits in front of the barn with a silo. And in recent years, that's been used for seasonal housing or volunteer housing, and that's proposed for. It's not clear actually from Simone's letter what the use of that's going to be. So it may be proposed for lease, or it may be retained for park quarters or something like that. And
There's
the
also the other one,
old, the
George
little
Jones. or
old
whatever it is.
Farwell Jones, that's Farwell Jones.
Well, the one that has been empty for years.
That's the Olive Stowe house is,
The one on the corner of Manual Drive. They're going to put in a
oh yeah,
septic.
George Hall.
George Hall.
So there's a little old house next to the farmhouse with the barn and the silo. And it's quite old, just barely postdates the Revolution. And that has not had any use, but it's proposed for a lease. And I think the cement garage behind it might be too. Some of this is not totally clear to me at this point. So that's another one that's proposed to be leased.
And what's the
And
one across from the Rangers house
oh,
that someone just moved in?
it's yellow.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's the John Nelson house.
But that's in Lincoln.
That was proposed, when I left, the idea was it would be an interpretive adjunct because it has direct access to the visitor center and the trail, and kids and whatnot could come there. But now it's leased, and yeah, it has been leased in the past when we didn't know what to do with it. But staying in Concord, so there's that little antique house, and that'll be rehabbed to be a 4-bedroom house, I think, with, I don't know, 2.5, 3 bathrooms. And then going from there, further down is Angelo Inferrara, no, the George Hall house. First, the George Hall house, which is another big farmhouse next to the old Albano farm stand, which they're going to save, I guess. And that'll be converted into probably a 4-bedroom, whatnot. They can hide the parking there, and it's not Revolutionary Warrior,
No,
but it's still a historic house. And then from there, no, not yet. Inferrara. There's the Inferrara House, which is almost it's at the corner of Shady Side or Sunny Side. I will never figure out which one that is.
I know, but
One's in Lincoln, one's in Concord. That's all I know.
Sunnyside, but yes,
I can't get it straight.
but yeah,
But that was
that's right.
an Italian farm family in Concord too. So that guy once chased rangers with a scythe. So yeah. So that's I think that is slated for employee quarters. And then going out to Sam Brooks' house, which during my tenure, we were trying to make it available more for public use. And that's now going to be park quarters. So it'll be housing. So these are all, and there's a new parking area by it. That's a witness house. So that's kind of, really, can we do something different for all those agriculturally related structures around Lexington Road? We had a partnership with young farmers who were being educated at the farm school. Have you ever heard of that school?
Yeah, no, I know.
Yeah, it's amazing. And they had a program to educate young farmers. So there were new farmers, a couple of young farmers who lived in the Burke House, the one down the road, but across from Miriam House. And they made use of the farm stand and a lot of the fields around there, as well as the barn and other things like that. So we were on the verge of of a partnership with the trustees of reservations for a bigger concept for a agricultural partnership. But the trustees changed
Oh,
leadership.
That when Barbara Erickson became
Yeah,
the new director,
and so,
president or
so,
whatever.
but I'll post, or I'll post, can I post that? It's a draft special use permit, and it's great because Brian Donahue was sort of the conceptual godfather of it.
Mhm.
You know Brian Donahue.
I don't.
Oh, this
You're
is a,
gonna like him.
Okay.
Yeah. What's his book that you read and I didn't? What?
Great Meadows.
Great Meadows. Yeah.
oh my gosh, he knows more about the land here and the land use and its evolution and its history and the people who lived on it than
Yeah.
any human alive.
Uh-huh.
He
Okay,
taught
good.
it, or still does at
David
Brandeis.
Hackett Fisher's protege
Ah,
at
okay,
Brandeis.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was incredibly disappointing. So I won't say that these partnerships were easy. They were sometimes crazy, and the sheep and the cows were always getting out. But there were a lot of sheep and a lot of cows and a lot of interest. And so I really think we're sort of late to the game because all this information first started to come to the park in March. But there was transitional leadership in the town and in the national park, and we didn't find out until Anne walked in the front door.
Yeah, in July.
In June. It
June,
was
July?
June or July.
Yeah.
Yeah.
July.
So we're behind the 8 ball in terms of this federal 106 process, but Superintendent Monte de Leon, she didn't put the E on it.
Okay, now.
Has said she would accept comments from us until August 15th.
Yeah,
which
so we
is
have Monday. And I mean, I think the gist of what you've heard was actually spelled out in our original letter, which I think you'll have a copy
Landscapes
of.
and trails.
The latter paragraphs, Nancy has gone through every one of the properties that we care about, but the issue is, have they considered or would they consider alternative uses? And barring, if we can't get that, would they at least make a priority of those most historic houses and lease them last? I mean, and we also ask, not clear, the idea of putting up a swing set in the back. I mean, it's so.
Yeah, what do the leases say in terms of protecting the structures I mean, they're in a national park. This is not Minuteman National Park Estates. And so all this activity, and lead paint's another issue. I think because they're federal, I looked at the advertisement for the house on 2A, and there is a disclaimer in that for lead paint may be there. And the feds are not required by
So they
state
don't
law
have to
to
remove
de-lead before they rent.
But they still can't rent to children, I think, under the age of 9 years old.
Well, I think they wouldn't. If that's a state law, they could, but I don't think they would because it's obvious risk.
Have we proposed any alternative uses for these properties?
I think some things that could be considered would be leasing for office space for partners, for rentals for activities, meetings, whatnot. We did have, there was some effort in that direction. It would take some more work, but it is not dangerous to have a historic house unused as long as it's carefully ventilated and looked after, and you can still maintain it, as all historic structures in Concord are probably closed up, including the old manse over the winter. So there's ways to bring down the house, but there were reenactor workshops at Noah Brooks Tavern. There were colonial dinners. There were all kinds of community things, not income producing. And I know they're obscenely underfunded, and they do need. And I think we can support some of the less historic structures being leased, particularly when they're up manual drive or Lincoln has a couple. And there are more residences coming to the park in the future too.
Concord doesn't realize any benefit from
No, in fact, Concord is a little bit challenged.
the leasing.
No.
No, the issue for Concord is that
no.
it adds to the housing stock.
Right.
And that,
Numbers from that, affordable housing go down, right?
So in terms of 40B, it has to be a permanent restriction
I
or
don't think those
something.
would classify as 40.
But no, no, they can't be. Yeah, because they don't own them, and the park would never put a permanent deed restriction on those. But some parts of Concord's affordable housing community may think it's nevertheless a good idea to try to work for additional affordable units, even if they don't actually count.
but they're not gonna, they can't use these because they,
They can't use them for 40B relief, but they could count. They could, I don't know, they could.
I thought that.
These are all market rate. I suppose they could decide to somehow make them not market rate, or maybe somebody will lease them and sublease them.
I don't know.
And
I mean, but as we know that they were part of the deal for getting the grant of the money, the $27 million, was that they would lease these out and bring in $300,000 to $400,000 a year.
I've heard
4 to
4 to 5,
500,000.
and we don't know. We
Whatever
don't
it
know.
is. But that was a condition.
We don't really know what the conditions are.
that's-
We know that there's been a lot of top-down
That's a
pressure.
condition from Congress when the bill was passed?
I think it's, I won't say.
Well,
I'm not sure.
this is our understanding. I don't know for sure.
That's not
I
my
can't remember if she
understanding.
actually said that.
She said
I
this
thought she
is
said
what
something like that.
Congress expects.
Yeah.
But
Can I ask a question? I'm
Yeah.
just curious. Simone was at the last meeting, is that correct?
Yep.
Did these issues come up with her when she was there
Yes.
to answer these questions?
We brought this up.
Did she have answers for, because there was a number of things you referenced that you didn't have clarity on, so.
Not really, because we also brought it up Monday night.
Right,
She presented to the.
right, the select
selectmen.
board, right.
Yeah, I mean, she has maintained that this is as Nancy just said, this is what Congress is expecting.
Okay.
The grant money that they received
Right.
was received based on the plan that they submitted. And the plan they say they submitted is what we've seen, how they're going
Right.
to address problems with the landscape
Right.
and these properties.
So,
bringing money.
rather than belabor the point with you, because I don't.
Oh, okay.
No, I just have a question. I think, wouldn't she be amenable to extending the August 15th deadline for our response? Seeing we came to the table late?
Contracts. Yeah.
I don't know. Hi, Mark, I would like to introduce Margie Brown, who is from the Minuteman National
Hi,
Historical
how are
Park.
you? How are you?
Thank you.
Hi, yeah, I think I can answer some of your questions about the funding source. Deferred maintenance is a really big issue across the National Park Service.
Right.
And so the Great American Outdoors Act, also known as the Legacy Restoration Fund,
Right.
is specifically targeted to deferred maintenance. So any structure that has been not adequately maintained and is in serious deteriorating condition was eligible for this funding. But the park also had to have a viable strategy. And so we prepared a strategic facility plan with several options for how we could kind of rescue some of the houses that had not been receiving maintenance for at least a decade, a lot of rodent infestation. We've just really struggled with having vacant buildings. We've had termites, very serious pest damage throughout. So we really, to save these buildings, we really had to be strategic with the Great American Outdoor Act possibility. In order to compete successfully for the funds, there's very limited funds. They were really targeted to the big parks. It's a pretty big deal that Minuteman was one of 75 parks across the system that was selected for this funding. So, but some of the considerations that, you know, you're asking about was how are we going to prove that our proposal would be sustainable? And that's a really key factor is sustainability. And so one of the things we had to include was demolitions. And you don't see that in the proposal because we have to do a lot more compliance for demolitions, but we have identified 7 buildings, some of which are on the National Register, that will come down. And that actually scored us a lot of points. And so, you know, in the future, you will hear more about that. There is a little bit of an issue with the funding. It actually got gobbled up pretty quickly. And that's partly why we're moving really quickly. We were able to slide into the first year of funding. And being in the first year, it means we've had to really fast track. And that's why, you know, I hear some of your frustration about not seeing these. You know, I think on both sides, we've had some change of staff. We had a change of superintendency. I think there was welcome, Anne. You know, I think there was some change in that office as well. I personally delivered the buildings info to the office, and Marcia Rasmussen was copied on the letter as well. So
And when was that? When was that? Sometime ago?
March.
March.
Yes, I believe it was in March.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I just want to say, I mean, Simone Monteleone is very detail oriented. So, you know, when I hear some of this, it just doesn't fall under it doesn't make sense that it fall. I don't think she was there when this was initiated. Is that correct?
right. So
Okay. Yeah.
it was initiated under BJ Dunn, but the shifting from like an out year of funding to fiscal year 2022, that happened as Simone was arriving. And so she is an immaculate immaculate, her compliance, that's the word. She is exceedingly good at compliance. And I think that is partly why she was brought to Minuteman is, you know, knowing that there was this really terrific funding source, but very complex compliance requirements. And I must say, I think she's done an exceptional job helping us navigate through all the compliance that's necessary.
Well, I think, Margie, you said that you brought that package to the park, and was that the June 30th package of buildings? Because that's the one that sort of got lost in the what's it called these days.
Well, I brought it to 2 locations. There was the town offices, but then also I think where it ultimately was at the town manager's office. So, but I did, you know, I brought everything down. So I guess, you know, it's unfortunate that, but you know, it happens when we have changes in staff. So
and those
and we're trying to do is, you know, whatever we can to kind of bring you on board with this, because it's so important that we save these buildings. You know, as you mentioned, we have witness buildings. They've been vacant for a long time, and they are really starting to show signs of.
We had other, you know, just trying to remember. Melissa and I are alums. There are a lot of us around town. I would not say it has been 10 years, but I do know that it's been extremely difficult in the last several years for reasons beyond anybody's control. But I hope it doesn't foreclose the opportunities for partnerships that would benefit the park in other ways for the next 25 years or permanently. That's my fear. That it forecloses the South Side Trail option, it forecloses a farm partnership.
Those are certainly have not been taken off the table. Those have been considerations all along. So I think, you know, we're focused on getting the physical structure stabilized, but the types of partnerships that you have been talking about this evening, we're still trying to forge those relationships with farmers and have a leasing strategy that is more inclusive. When I came in 2016, the First Fruit farmer had actually been asked to leave. There was also a note from Brian Donahue saying it was not sustainable because it was relying too heavily on volunteerism. So we did do a strategic plan in terms of looking at all the different options for the houses and trying to figure out, well, which it will generate the revenue to ensure that the buildings are adequately maintained. So I think we've taken an approach where we're really trying to do what we think is best to save the buildings. And if you do look at the Nelson House, the people who are living in it are maintaining it immaculately. They call us every time there's an issue. So we have that, 24/7 monitoring of the house. And, in contrast, Gowan Clark has been empty and some rodents have moved in. Wires are being gnawed. That puts the building at great risk. And so we see having tenants and getting the houses in better condition as our highest priority.
That's what everybody agrees on, I think. It's just if you have $400,000 or $500,000 a year coming in, how do you back off of that? So you've got the house, well, you've got a commitment, and for the commitment to lease these structures, you're going to have income.
Yes.
And
How would you make up the income? if they move out?
and how do you break yourself of the reliance on that income in order to form different kinds of partnerships? And is that agricultural partnership concept still alive? And where do you see it, or where could we see it?
Yeah, so the agricultural concept is still there. We are currently doing special use permits with 6 different farmers, both from locally, they're all local. So we have 6 farmers. We do have livestock in the park. We have pigs and cows and sheep and chickens. And so that's a relationship that we have forged predominantly with Codman Community Farms.
Right.
But what we'd like to do is to, once we get the buildings repaired, and they have to be in good condition to lease. And so we have to get like the Cardi barn has to be stabilized. It's currently, its roof is failing, and that's resulting in some interior rot. And so just to get the funding to get that building stabilized, we move ahead with this GOA plan. And then as a second phase, we can look at how we could build an agricultural lease. But that's certainly within the park's vision for what's being done is to have sustainable agricultural practices.
Yeah.
And now one of the things that this income would generate would be some revenue to have a leasing specialist. And so I think you remember Diana Sheba managed the special use permits, had a really good relationship with the farmers.
Lots of people.
Yeah, so we're stretched pretty thin at this point. And so we look forward to the time when we can reestablish that position.
Well, that's different than managing residential tenants. I mean, she was very, very much focused on special park uses and different kinds of commercial options. She was very creative, actually. But then there was a change, there were changes. She went to Lowell and whatever. But anyway, it's good to know that, you know, there are some things if the houses weren't fit for good for big families, that would be one thing to maybe reduce the impact. Or, I mean, there's just alternatives that would be good to have a public discussion about. And
I mean, I mean, you're sensitive to what, one of the issues that we've, you know, having lived in the town for a long time, there are still people who live here who remember when they lived, those were their own homes. And now they were in their mind, forced out. Maybe it was market rate, maybe they got a fair value on the property, but they had to leave something that was their home. And now you're opening them up for new tenants to come in. And I don't think it sits well from a public relations point of view. And I just want to make sure that you are aware of some of the sensitivity that those of us who've been here a long time appreciate for these people. I
I'm
understand.
from Lincoln, so I understand that fully. I have
Yeah, you
friends
do.
that
Okay, you
lived in
do.
the neighborhood.
You know.
And I've, you know, since I've been at the park for 6 years, and I certainly struggled with the decision to work at the park because of the sensitive nature. But the prevailing feedback with the conversations that I have had is that the park is becoming increasingly valued. The Battle Road Trail was brilliant in its inception and execution. It has provided the community with such a valuable resource. So I think there is a sad story for those families, particularly the farmers that lost their properties. But there's a lot of good that came out of the park. And
absolutely.
most of the people who did relocate, you know, they have seen their property values. You know, I think of someone like Betty Levin. You know, she had a sheep farm. Well, she moved over to Conant Road. She found another beautiful farm and lived the rest of, you know, her farming days there. And it is actually still a farm. So
her property was purchased twice, once by the Air Force and once by the National Park, as I recall. Right?
Well, I didn't know about the Air Force purchase, but that makes sense because it was right near the Air Force entrance.
Yeah, right. I think 2 times.
Well, okay, we've taken a long time on this. I think, you know, we need to draft a letter, which we can, and to get to
by the 15th.
You know, I mean, I think the substance of most of what we would comment on, we've discussed right now. I mean, I think, speaking for myself.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, you know.
And I must say, you know, don't worry about playground structures and stuff like that. I mean, go take a look at the Nelson House. They're cleaning up the invasive plants. They're mowing the lawn. You know, it looks
so
great.
You're going to clone them, and they will be
funding to take care of the trees and take care of the pests and, you know,
we won't talk about the other ones.
Could I just actually?
Great.
As I remember,
I want to jump in with one quick question before. You've been very gracious, and I don't want to prolong things. But one thing that hasn't been discussed too much, and I know that one thing that the commission has some concerns about, is that not all these properties are as it were, sort of equal historical value. Some of them are either witness houses or near witness houses. Others are much later structures that don't have nearly the same architectural historical significance. So I think in an ideal world, prioritizing some of those units for rental would be, from the historical perspective, much less problematic. I also have, related to that, so one question that I have is there sort of a prioritization scheme? Right now, as I see it, as it's been delivered, it's a plan and a package for all of the houses to be rented. And I'm wondering if might be the room for a prioritization scheme to rent out, first and foremost, the least historically significant structures, as it were. And secondly, and sort of very related to that, is I'm, as somebody who lives in a late 17th century house myself and spends a lot of time worrying about structural integrity, nothing makes me happier than to know that these houses are going to be taken care of structurally. And as you've said, there's a lot of work to be done, and that needs to be done. But of course, structural renovations are one thing, to make it a study house, but to make it a full rental unit is something different. And so I wonder, and I have to say my big worry here is plumbing. To make these units rentable, I would think that they would have to have certain modern amenities that will forever change the structures. And so I haven't yet had, I'm new to the commission, so I apologize if this is something that everybody is already bored by and knows very well. But when it comes to sort of, reworking some of the joinery or replacing cracked beams, that sort of warms the cockles of my heart. When it comes to thinking about where the pipes are going to go in a timber frame structure and what that looks like then to visitors down the road and how it might permanently alter the structure, that begins to raise a couple of questions. So I wonder if, again, I'm sorry for that long, but both on the prioritization of structures from sort of most modern to most historic, and also if there's been discussions about these other sort of modern modifications that will change the structures permanently.
Yeah, it's a great question. So the design drawings were done internally. The National Park Service has a group known as the Historic Architecture, Conservation, and Engineering team center. And so they are very sensitive to an unbelievable degree. They are exceptional historical preservationists. Many of the historic structures were lived in up until the 70s. And so they already had some alterations and some plumbing. And then just for example, George Hall House, there was going to be, and Nancy probably remembers this, there was an initial effort to convert the house into 4 units. And so some alterations.
Before my time.
Oh, was it before your time? Wow. Yeah. So there were some gutting and alterations. Like four gas lines came in, and so we thought, well, wait a sec, 4 units. There's going to be a lot of vehicles. There's going to be a lot of waste.
Farmers don't like
our primary goal is to preserve the structure. So we're just going to have 1 unit. And so, yes, it will be occupied, but not in a way that would kind of put a stress both on the building, but also on the landscape and the septic system. So I think I'm hoping, and I'm answering your question, most of the structures already have contemporary plumbing. There are some new bathrooms going in, but they're being done in a very sensitive way by preservation architects that are kind of very skilled at fitting things in. It does increase the cost. Everything's sort of custom done. And hopefully, one of my concerns was just making sure that the plumbing didn't lay on outside walls, because as you know, old houses are not typically well insulated. And so we just want to make sure that we are ensuring, minimizing the possibility of water damage with like a burst pipe.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for being here, answering the questions. I have a feeling that we won't really get what we want because we don't really want the lease, but totally understand your position and what you're doing and the sensitivity with which you will do it.
It's an amazing piece of work, Margie, under incredibly urgent imperatives.
Yeah.
And you can't find better people to work on historic structures, but it's just the overall thing, like, where's the park going?
Well, I think the park is going in the right direction.
I know.
Think maybe from the outside, it maybe looks a little scary to see so much work happening concurrently, but we do have a HASTE team really engaged. They love the park. They've been connected with it for decades. So
I think what's hard.
I don't know. I think it's going to work out.
What's hard is that people don't know one thing about it yet. I don't think, maybe even in your town. I don't know. I think it's going to be surprising to people what's happening.
Well, although I think they'll be excited. I think, people who
Maybe.
have known,
Yeah.
who drive along the road, see the deterioration of the structures. They see
Yeah.
Sam Brooks that used to look a little, a lot spiffier 10 years ago. The
Well,
paint's
5 years ago,
5
it
years
looked better.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, and we actually did have seasonal housing in there in the 90s.
Yeah, Marty, yeah, you put your finger on something there. It was a terrible mess. It's sometimes residential use can be rugged on a house, especially when you got 19-year-olds and lots of beer cans.
Yeah, so you're not going to rent that.
Well, I do think that park housing is more tightly managed than it was.
That's going to be a park house now, right?
So we have about 7 people in our park houses now, and it's pretty closely monitored. And so I guess I'm not sure how bad it was at Sam Brooks, but we would just need to hope that having the house occupied is much better than having it vacant.
Depends on how you manage.
Okay, well, we're not going to solve that. So thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
not
you so much, Margie.
Thank you. Good to see you.
So we will get our letter.
And just so I can convey to Simone, is the plan to comment by early next week? Just, we are on a really tight time schedule.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I
Thank
have
you
sort
so
of
much.
after my head.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks
So much.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Thank you.
I mean, I think I will try to distill kind of what we've talked about and what did you
It's
say?
so big.
Why couldn't they follow a model like Walden Woods?
In what
No
way?
way.
With the bringing people in to work the land certain times of the year and letting the structures sit vacant, for the remaining couple months.
Oh, it's season. It's seasonal.
Very seasonal,
Yeah.
right.
Oh, I didn't know that actually.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that is what the Farwell Jones house, the house with the barn and the sunrow. That was a lot of seasonal people
It's
from
seasonal. It's not
different
going to bring the
divisions.
money that they need. They clearly need,
But
they
but it forecloses some options.
because the concern,
And-
I think, is, okay, they lease them now. Maybe they lease them for 5 years. They supplant 3
I
years.
think the leases are for
3
3
years.
years.
I don't like the neighborhood situation.
No,
It's
it's
just a
like
it's
in
just
Minuteman Estates.
National Park Estates.
National Park Estates, yeah. Well, okay, we will write this up.
The basketball net.
That's fine. Anyway, so we'll come up with something that, yes, we will comment.
Okay,
I've
what
written this
else?
down. So thank you. So we're gonna move on, and I'm just gonna give you a.
Oh, I want to just say, just for the record,
Oh.
Minuteman is 2 words. National Historical Park.
Yes, I think Nancy.
There's about 5 or 6 different ways to do it.
No, there isn't. There's only one way, which is what Nancy just said.
Minuteman
think-
Media Network is 1 word, Minuteman.
You told me that, I think the first day I arrived to do work at the park was,
I'm sorry.
first of all, the proper.
2
name.
capital M's, yes, right, and a
Proper
space in between.
Yeah, and it's historical park.
Would can I just ask in terms of the standard precedent, will you draft a letter and then circulate it around for our comments, or how does it tend to work? Is that,
I didn't the last time because we were under even less time.
yeah,
It's okay by me, and that's not, is that deliberation, we have this open meeting thing.
yeah. Oh, I see, okay.
I'm gone for the weekend.
You can't do that because, well, I will do my best and I'm going to just send it. Is that deliberating? It's writing a letter. Is that deliberation?
Send it back to me rather than to.
Okay, that's the way we'll solve it. I will write something. I'll send it to Anne. She can send it out individually to you. You make your comments, send it back to her, and she can send it back to me. How's that? And then ultimately Anne would print it on our stationery dot. It's just welcome to
Well, I have to tell you, I today took my ethics course online through as a new volunteer. So now, all this now makes sense to me when you say, yes.
And did you pass?
I did, yes, I got almost 100%.
Okay, so we'll do that way, and I will try to work on it. Maybe tomorrow afternoon. I have stuff for much of the day, but I'll get
It's tomorrow, Friday.
tomorrow's Friday.
Oh,
It won't be as long as the other letter. I don't think, I mean, we don't have to say this, iterate over and over and over again. And I think you all, I think we all kind of have similar thoughts about this. And it doesn't have to be said 15 different ways. It can just be pretty simple. So I will send something to, well, do you monitor your email over the weekend?
I only work till noon on Friday.
Okay, so that's how we'll do it,
She
okay?
only works till noon on Friday.
But she just said she
Oh.
would read her email on the weekend.
I didn't want to, I'm not making work for anybody. I was just wondering what standard precedent is. I
Well,
don't want to change norms
No,
or
I
anything.
just ram it down your throat.
All right, well, you know what? Sometimes that's how things get done.
So, okay, so that's how we'll do that. So we're gonna move on to the Historic Resources Master Plan, which eventually we will get this thing done. I just want to give a little brief report on that. Ann and I met with Marcia Rasmussen to kind of tell her what we're thinking of about, I mentioned to you what
The revisions of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what Marcia suggested, and it really did make a lot of sense, is that really what we ought to do, and there is a grant program for this at Mass Historical, is to write a grant to develop a preservation plan for the town of Concord, which would look over everything. And there are models for this. You can Google, I think Beverly and Lennox have very good preservation plans, and they were prepared by a company called Historic Strategies, I think out of Pennsylvania, which might be one.
Right.
Right, and I think you would suggest at one of the meetings.
Yeah, well, they were recommended to us, I believe, by Jennifer Doherty from Mass Historical. And as a component of that, or would be this other thing that I have been wanting, which is a web-based portal to historic resources of Concord. And that would include the macroses, the oral histories, the GIS maps, the stuff, the town records, and get access to what's available at special collections. So it would be 2 or 3 different kinds of people. One would be a web designer, and the other would be this strategies group that really understands it. I mean, Marcia's absolutely right. We have these, well, we have us, we have the HDC, we have this, we have that planning. There are a lot of elements to preserving stuff in Concord, but there's no one plan for it. The long range plan talks about it, but the long range plan also kind of does it in very generalized terms. So I think this is the direction we're going to go, and see if we can get something to the CPC. As a voting member of the CPC, you know how you're going to vote, right?
Yeah, I'm good until April.
Okay, good. So you can vote on it. So that's where that is. And then I'd like to just move on to the Squaw Sachem Trail issue. This has been, as I've learned, it's been an issue for decades, apparently. And I reached out, and I think this was part of the meeting documents too. I reached out to Jennifer Doherty again to ask her, I mean, clearly it's got to come up with other communities. The sense that the term squaw has kind of a pejorative connotation in 2022. And is there a better way, or what else could we call her? And yet no one seems to know her name. And I Googled this. The Arlington Historical Society had a nice little article about her husband's names and about her children, but not her. So one thought is to propose we put a plaque up that has much more description about the importance of the Squaw Sachem. She was a very important historical figure. I think she gets really short shrift in Concord. The Jethro tree. This is where the transaction of the, what is it, 6 Mile Square, and she deeded the land. I think we could do a much better job. That might be something we would propose, maybe as part of the 250th. But I just bring it up just for thought.
Are there no pictures that exist of her?
Well, because this is in the 1630s, 40s.
Images, no.
As a point of information, so the Department of the Interior, I did a little research on this, and squaw is now one of 3 words that they're making a federal mandate for change.
Yeah.
With the 2 others dating back now several decades. But one of the things that's been recommended for various federal properties is consultation with local indigenous tribes and tribal leaders. And so I wonder if there's a way to partner with other local groups that might have suggestions on
How else?
appropriate names.
A
yeah.
better way. I reached out to David Wood, who said there's somebody at the museum who is kind of working on this,
Oh,
who's supposed to get back to me. And I've also reached out to Shirley Blanky, who's like I don't know, she's trained archaeologist or anthropologist, whatever, who also has worked with Native American tribes in the area. So I would agree. So I think I'm just bringing it up that I think though it's something that we could maybe encourage as part of the 250th. To it, one of the things we want to recognize are those, we make a big hoo-ha over Isaac Davis, other people at the bridge. These are the native tribes that were here actually before the revolution.
Yeah, they might have a different idea about who to honor.
Yeah, well,
So that'd be good to talk to people who,
but I mean,
who were
clearly she
among,
was a major
among us.
leader, and
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I think
Well, who has written about her? Who knows?
all I've ever found really about her was this thing from the Arlington Historical Society, because she deeded
Well, maybe
land to
the
that
tribes
area.
know more about her.
And that's the first question. I'm not sure what
Yeah.
tribe. If she
Yeah.
is, she was a sachem of the Pawtucket Confederation. So help.
Somebody know Pawtucket Confederation?
There's just it's remarkable how little is kind of,
Oh, I know. I know.
so I will keep working on that, and anything you guys can help
I
uncover.
think it's really interesting. I think I read some of the same stuff that you did, that the Department of Interior, Secretary Holland, created a commission
Mhm.
or a group to study this, and they have their charges to look at 5 different alternatives for different places
Yeah.
to name differently. And one of the examples they gave was Crystal Lake. And instead of calling it Squaw Lake or Squaw
Squaw
Bluff,
Lake in
Squaw
California.
Mesa or something, they'll call it Crystal Mesa.
Well, there's like Squaw
instead of,
Valley.
Squaw
instead
Valley
of,
is no
Squaw
longer
Valley.
Squaw
yeah,
Valley.
Squaw
yeah.
Valley. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Squaw Valley. And then they were looking at something that was related, geographically related somehow in the same context. If it's
So, okay, well,
but that doesn't relate
no.
to the
Well, to
person.
this challenge, but at any rate, you're all welcome to help.
Lady Chief translated.
Yeah.
Lady Chief.
It was-
Sachem or Squaw Sachem.
Squaw Sachem is Lady Chief.
Lady Chief.
They don't give any names.
No,
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
they have the name of her husband, her first husband, her sons.
That's a story in itself.
It is.
Really.
It is, but at any rate, so to be continued, okay? All right,
But she
moving
did-
on.
But she did sell that land, so.
What
She
were the
did.
other 2 words?
One was for African Americans and the other was for Japanese.
Oh. The Japs or Nips or what did they?
I
say?
actually don't know. I assumed it was.
Something, Jordan,
Yeah.
that's, well, there are more than, so I would like to move on to the National Guard Armory and its National Register application. I really wasn't clear what are we just supposed to bless this, or,
We just wanted to inform you.
okay,
So that's all.
I think that's an interesting idea. I'd love to see the Armory used more like it used to be, especially on
and it's a
April
party
19th.
place.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah,
what it
for
was? Is
the-
that- Okay, good.
It was the Patriot Ball and it was really great.
Parties, a lot of parties.
A lot of
there.
parties.
Yeah, a lot
of parties.
Busy.
Emerson
Yeah.
Hospital used to have its
Yeah.
gala there.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness.
Does anybody know the state? The museum is interesting. Is that, it sounds like it's fairly, I mean, now since we were talking about the museum, the Right Tavern, I'm curious now about this. Is it fairly advanced to the museum?
I don't know, I
thing?
haven't been inside it since I'm sure we'd be welcome to go visit.
Who
Would
was
you
the
like to
guy? Who
organize?
was the National Guard guy that was General Konvichuk, Lenchuk?
We're in Concord.
Konvichuk. Do you remember him? He
No.
had his offices there for a while when the National Guard was there, and then they
So
booted him.
I could
Charlie
get-
Baker
I
threw
could
him
get
out.
us in there, but
I will contact the museum
Oh,
and
I
just
just-
ask maybe.
yeah, he's
could we
not
come
there.
for a
I'd love to
visit?
go and see if it's open.
Yeah, it's a great space, don't you think?
yeah, oh, absolutely.
I love
Even
it.
the one in Newton was beautiful that they sold
Oh,
off.
yeah,
That
that's
was
right.
gorgeous.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, which, because we could include these in our little portal. There's another whole series of documents. So I will do that. I will contact them and say that we would be interested in a site visit or how
because we can't go more than two of us at a time, so you could just go on your
We
own.
can
I'll
if we
ask you-
don't talk.
Oh, that's true. If we don't talk, I can't not talk. What?
Well, don't confess ahead of the problem.
Okay,
So that would mean that Nancy and Melissa would have to go separately
yeah.
in order to stop the talking.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, moving right along.
I can do it.
Well, under other business, I did mention this, that we do need to, Anne's going to include this in our next, meeting materials for next month will be the, administrative code. Alan, do you remember working on this before you came on board? So it's been a while. This is something that exists. It's, every commission has its own mission and its administrative code, and it just outlines the obligation and duties of the commission. And we needed to update ours. So Anne's got the document where that shows what we have kind of worked on so far. She'll send that around and we
Oh,
can work
there's
on
a
it.
draft.
Yeah,
to
remember?
update. Okay, I remember
you may not-
the one that I think is still in force.
Yeah, but we were almost ready to send it off to the town manager, and then COVID hit. Anyway, so that's that. The scenic road bylaw. So I thought that the planning board was going to take this up on Tuesday night, and they didn't. So now it's been pushed off for them not until September 27th, possibly. And Public Works will talk about it on the 14th, which I think that's our next meeting.
Oh, and
right?
September 14th, Public Works.
Yeah, so to be continued, I'm not entirely sure. Elizabeth wasn't entirely sure. Elizabeth Hughes, who's the town planner.
I'll check and make sure I go because I'm liaison to DPW.
Okay. One question that came up, Joanne Gibson, who was a part of helping us develop this, asked if it got approved, as the scenic road bylaw actually got approved by the Attorney General.
The rules and regs.
No, they approved the bylaw itself.
Oh, they're looking
We
at the
do the
law.
rules and regulations.
Yeah.
What would happen if something, and I don't know the answer to this, if someone needed to do work on one of these scenic roads? And I haven't asked Elizabeth, I don't know yet. I'm not sure she knows really. Maybe she does. At any rate, so that's the status of that. Current preservation restrictions, I don't think anyone has, other than, the Mott Shaw, and the issue about the right tavern. I haven't organized anything. My preservation restriction is on the depot in West Concord, and given the status of the MBTA, I don't think they're going to be doing anything except set fire to it. And then the preservation awards, I just want to say that Ann and I have a meeting with Annette Bagley, who
Oh,
I'm pretty sure you.
I was just emailing with her.
Yeah,
I'm trying
okay.
to, yeah, good.
Yeah. So Annette, I think I mentioned to you, Annette was the one with a couple other folks got these preservation awards underway, and we're going to go meet with her next week to talk about reviving them and what's the process about eliciting nominations and how do we do that.
Good.
And then we have the minutes, and I have to say, these are the most comprehensive, amazing minutes ever.
Well,
Ever.
I think it was an important meeting, so that's why I spent a lot of time on it.
Well, obviously we just babble away. So I just have a couple, I'll start off. I just have a couple things that I just wanted to correct. Actually, I only have, one. On the first page, the first real whole paragraph, I described how Ms. Monteleone had presented information. It wasn't an informal CHC because we can't do that. It was an historic issues gathering, coffee. I just want to make sure people don't think that we met in private, because that's not true. And I don't know, it's a minor point. She was to meet with the select board on August 8th. She was the one who kept saying August 9th, but it was really August 8th. If that, I think she just, she was there on the 8th. And that's,
I have a couple.
and also on page 1, 2, 3, on page 4,
Under number 3, I noted that there will be, it wasn't a select board meeting. It was a planning board meeting on August 9th, and that's the one I just mentioned. I thought, I was under the impression and was told that they were going to meet to talk about the scenic roads bylaw. But that's really all I have. Anybody else?
I have, but I don't know what page it is. Oh, that's July 14th, July 13th. At the top of the page, it says the George Hall House. It's George Hall, Hall. And Manuel Drive, this is always another one. Manuel, Manuel. That was the first name of the guy who.
Manuel.
Yeah, Manuel. And let's see. She's working. And when it says at the bottom, I'm working directly with DPW. I'm really just a liaison for the historical commission. They won't let me play a lot. And there was one more little teeny thing, I think.
I'll note that where it says check spelling after Ryan Hanley, that it's spelled
Yeah, I
correctly.
think that was the other
No
one.
change necessary. Yes.
Oh, this one's important.
Page 6.
We had been, the Preservation Restrictions Commission was relieved of our responsibility for the Wheeler Harrington House a long time ago, I think.
Is that right? I've been wondering about
Yeah.
that.
Yes.
Yeah.
In fact,
it
I'm not
was-
sure we ever really were.
We were supposed to, we didn't do what.
In the
we were
historical, in the
supposed
master plan, it does say that.
Yeah, but it's not accurate.
Okay. So who is managing that?
to. And NRC.
NRC and the town manager, it's my understanding from Marcia, it's the town manager's office.
But they're supposed to, at the meeting I sat at, where we agreed, they were supposed to tell the historical commission when anything happened with the house.
Yes, they are. And I know one thing Marcia does intend to have before she retires the charrette. I don't
Yeah.
know when, to talk about the ultimate use of the grounds in the house. Have you ever been over there?
I haven't. No, I'm curious to go in there. I'd like to see the house. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think, there's nobody in it now.
It's not rented now. It's
I don't think
Oh,
so.
that's really dangerous.
That would be the part of the reason. Okay.
All right, page 7.
Okay.
Miss Nelson reported Battle Road Scenic Byway Committee submitted grant application. Nearly 1 million. I may have misspoke.
You were pretty excited about it.
Well, I'll be excited about it.
You
if
get
I
it.
get anything. That's it. And these are really great. I know how long this must have taken because I know you went back to the recording. And that's really tedious and it was really important.
I mean, this is
Yeah.
outstanding because, yeah, I mean, these are easily the most detailed we've ever had. So thank you.
And
So
accurate.
given all that
Won't
and,
happen every time.
okay. So may I have someone move to approve the minutes as amended?
So moved.
I make that motion.
And,
My second then.
thank you all in favor. Alan?
Aye.
Nancy?
I
Melissa? Aye. Michael?
Aye.
So with that, that is the end of the meeting, unless there is additional business to discuss. Anyone like to bring up?
well, I'll wait till after the meeting.
Ha.
Oh, but don't go anywhere, Mike. I'll
Do you need
say-
to end the recording
I'll
before
say,
you? Yeah.
Well, it's just an idea. It's only an idea. I'm very agitated by the state of Concord scenic roads, even though some of them are not designated scenic roads. And the pain that they suffer from this equipment in
Oh.
public works that goes along the roadside and just shears off whatever is in its path and shreds trees and seedlings and whatever. And the stone walls are overcome and whatnot. I would love to just present this crazy idea to the Public Works Commission at their next meeting. And see.
And what, get a new machine?
No, yes, but talk about what it would take to have, maybe it's a CPC application to have what do I want to call it? An initiative to really improve
I
Concord's
think we need
public
to have a
roads.
conversation with them to show them what it looks like after they
Yeah.
go
Sure.
through and destroy.
Just-
And even, I mean, my nickname is Clear Cut Al.
Oh,
But what they do,
Oh,
what they
it's
do,
so-
Even offends you, huh?
yes. And if I'm upset about it,
Yeah.
right, because everything is pulled up, ripped out, sheared off.
Shredded. Yeah, I mean,
It's terrible.
and you
It's
can't see
terrible.
the stone walls, and I know they're in there.
Right.
So I think it would be a fun way for the Historical Commission and DPW to work together.
That's fine. It also brings to mind, we could nominate a couple other roads for next year.
Oh, maybe not. Yeah.
How ambitious are you?
You said a couple other roads for,
Well, this year, we passed the scenic road bylaw.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
It has 9
that
designated
has
roads.
designated roads, okay.
We could nominate, there's a calling for Lowell Road as one that people would.
Not in its current state.
But at any rate, I mean, it's a thought, or we could ask to have to speak before the public. You can ask.
I'm just gonna surface this wild idea and see if I
Yeah.
get thrown out.
Or
They
even
might
if we
like
had
it.
pictures, if we had pictures.
I'll
we
I
could
think you
show
need
them.
pictures.
I'll take some
And pictures of what
Show
it can be
them
done
what it looks
sensitively,
Yeah.
Yeah.
maybe another town.
Honestly, guys, this looks like.
No, I know what I'm gonna say. I think we have to update the scenic roads bylaw to include
Oh my gosh,
maintenance
Alan would have a
practices. See, so that's
The
why I
other
wanted to.
Okay, I think.
I
after-
guess I have to call him in the morning.
Okay, so if there is no other business, I would like to declare this meeting over, and our next meeting is September 14th. And I would have, actually, one of you is gonna have to chair that because I'll be flying to Italy,
Oh,
Got it.
you.
I think. So we're done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, thank you.
Good to
Thank
see
you
you.
very much. Right, thank you.
Can I just say,